They mad that I got hard. Now I'm on the top charts.
Hey guys, what's up? Thank you for tuning in to the Never Broken podcast. Today's episode features former Gambino mobster Anthony Ruggiano. You're going to hear Anthony's stories of how he ran around with the Gottis, how he came up, who his father was, Fat Andy's son. You're going to hear about him going to the Cobra back into the days with Frank Sinatra and the gang that did the Matanzas heist. You're also going to hear about Anthony's addiction and how he has been sober over 35 years. He is truly the definition of never broken. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aden Leonard, and we got an episode for the Never Broken podcast. My guest today is Anthony Ruggiano, a guy that I've been trying to get for a while. Mob royalty, knew the Gottis, got some good stories to tell. So we hope that you check this out. So obviously, Anthony, been trying to do this for a while. I've seen and heard so much about you and your family, and I'll never forget this. Well, first of all, I'll let you introduce you're Anthony, and grew up in what, Queens area?
I was born in East New York, Brooklyn, and then when I was 5 years old, we moved across Conduit Boulevard to Ozone Park.
Okay.
Yeah, so half of my neighborhood's in Brooklyn, and half of my neighborhood's in Queens, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and Ozone Park, I mean, that's just mob royalty. I mean, Howard Beach, I mean, that's where the mob lives pretty much,
It's funny, because when I first moved to Ozone Park, the only mob place there was actually the Bergen Hunt Fish Club.
Okay.
Charlie Wagons moved to Ozone Park first from East New York, and then I guess after we moved, then like a lot of people started moving out of East, so there was a lot of mob presence in East New York, and when the neighborhood started changing, all those mob guys gravitated towards Ozone Park, and then it just blew up with the mob, and then of course from Ozone Park they moved into Howard Beach. They all bought houses in Howard Beach, like John lived in Howard Beach.
Yeah. So I was raised by my grandfather, and he has Italian name. Marzoni was their last name. But I remember growing up watching the movie with Ray Liotta about the Lufthansa heist. Yeah, Goodfellas. And they're on there and they're talking about, hey, there's Fat Andy.
Yeah.
And my grandfather was kind of a mafia historian and used to tell me stories. I mean, reading the newspapers about who your father was, Fat Andy and the Gottis and whatnot. When Gotti, I was young, but when Gotti was on trial and whatnot, my grandfather used to tune in every night and actually had a picture of Gotti in his office. That was kind of like his idol,
That's the sketch from Andy Warhol. They were selling that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the sketch from Andy. A lot of people had them in their houses. Listen, he was a good guy. He was a great friend of mine, but, he was dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
People look, it's funny because, that's like, even when you go in Italian supermarkets, instead of having pictures of like legitimate like Italians, they have pictures of all gangsters. Like,
I know.
That's just Hollywood, but there's a dark side to all that too, There's a dark side.
There is.
Yeah.
So, obviously your father's a mobster. What's life growing up at 9, 10 years old?
It was different, so we always knew something was different about my father, but we didn't know why. We were kids, but we just knew that, like me and my brother, we just knew that when he went into a restaurant or he walked into a room or a bar, like the atmosphere changed a little, and we didn't know why, but we felt it, like, so I would I'll give you an example. So I would go to a restaurant with my father on Sunday, like a nice high-end Italian restaurant, and there'd be like people waiting for tables, like there's an hour wait for a table, We would walk in, and we would never wait for a table, and we would get seated right away. But then, like another couple of weeks later, I would go out for dinner with like my friend Tony's family and his parents, and they would have to wait for a table, So I always knew like something was different about my father than my friends' fathers, but I didn't know what it was until I got older. And then I found out about all the mob stuff when I was like 13 years old.
Okay, what was the restaurant to go to back? Wasn't it regional?
Well, there was a lot of restaurants. We used to go to this restaurant called Ferdinand's.
Okay.
We used to go to Don Peps, of course.
Yeah.
At the time, Don Peps was a famous restaurant. Russo's was famous. Russo's there now. That's Russo's on the Bay. They owned the restaurant on Lippitz Boulevard. A lot of different restaurants. We used to go to this guy Bruno's. We used to go to,
Okay.
So there was a lot of Italian restaurants we used to go to, and we never waited online. Anywhere he went, he never waited online.
It was, hey.
Yeah, we walked in, hey, and, they all knew him, and, we got seated right away. And then the owners would always come over, and the cook would come out of the kitchen, so it was always, something going on, like something special happening.
Yeah, and just seeing that as a kid, you know something's up.
Yeah.
So know what. So when did you start, breaking your bones, start to go, I guess, back? Were you a good kid growing up?
I was a good kid up to the 6th grade. It's funny because when I was in the 6th grade, I got voted, I won the highest scholastic achievement award. I was the smartest male in the class, because back then, there was only 2 genders, but that's another story for another day.
Don't even get me
So
started.
back then, it was like male and female, and
Yeah.
there was I was voted the smartest boy in the class, and this girl Wendy was voted the smartest girl in the class. So we both won, and that was the 6th grade. That summer, when school ended, that's when I drifted off my block.
Okay.
I was 12 years old, getting ready to turn 13, and I drifted off my block, and then I hooked up with this group of kids, and I started smoking marijuana back in the 60s, and that's when I found out from the older kids that my father was in the mob. Because when I used to go to the pizzeria on the corner, they would say, "That's Fat Andy's son." They would point me out, and and then I started hearing stories, and then I knew at that point what was going on, and then there was a couple of articles in the newspaper that I read, so then I knew, and then my father, I didn't have a conversation, I didn't blatantly ask him, "Are you in the mafia?" But like, he didn't hide it from me at that point, because he knew I knew, so he started telling me little bits and pieces, and then I started, that's when my life changed, because then I hooked up with these kids, and I started playing hooky from school, and I started smoking weed, and and then it just snowballed from there. I became a truant, and and all that. It was the 60s, and then
A wild time.
yeah, and then I started, then I'm running around there. Now I'm Fat Andy. Now I knew who I was.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know who I was, but I knew I was his son now, and I
Yeah.
sort of lost who I was, and I became Fat Andy's son. Right, and now I'm running around the neighborhood, everybody knows who I am now, the store owners, the pizzeria guy, the barbers, you know what I mean? And at 16, I got suspended from high school. I got in trouble in high school, and they suspended me, and that's when I wound up going. That's when I started working for my father at 16 in 1969.
Okay. And I know your story a little bit. You talked to your father, and you said, I don't want to get a job.
Yeah.
I want to work with you. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think your father said, and I might be mispronouncing, but hey, going to jail is all a part of the job.
Right. So what happened was, when I got suspended from school, he didn't want me in the street.
He didn't want you in the life.
He didn't really want me in the street, but so he didn't talk to me. He never put his hands on us. Like, he never, and he didn't know how to reprimand us, because he had no father. His father died when he was 6 years old.
Was he a mobster?
No, he worked. He fixed trolley cars. He was a trolley car
Oh,
mechanic.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's how he died. He was actually fixing, in 1932. He was in the train yard in Brooklyn, and he was fixing a trolley car, and it moved, and it rolled, and severed his leg, and he bled out in the back then in 1932. By the time they got him to the hospital, he bled out. He was only 52 at the time, so he had no father. And he used to tell me he never knew what it was to have a father, so he didn't know how to reprimand us. So his reprimand was, he didn't talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, he would just walk in the house and look at me, and he'd go in his bedroom and close the door and stay in his bedroom and watch TV. So I called up my uncle, his older brother, my Uncle Frank, who I was very tight with, and there was a big age gap between him, and like a 20-year age gap between his older brother Frank and him, because he was the youngest, and my Uncle Frank was the oldest of 8 kids. So he came over the house, and we had like my first sit down in the kitchen, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to go to work." And my Uncle Frank said, so he said, "You want to go to work?" He goes, "Okay, I'm going to get you in the bricklayers union." So back then, that was a big job,
Yeah.
because everything was built in brick, not today. But that was a really, really good job and a great union. And I said to him, "I don't want to be no fucking bricklayer. Like, I don't want to lay brick." He goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to work for you." And my Uncle Frank now intervenes, and he goes, "Andy," he goes, "this kid, he's like us. You gotta." Because my Uncle Frank was in the gray area. He was legitimate, but he shy a lot on his job.
Okay.
He was a bookmaker. He also worked for the transit. He followed my grandfather into the transit authority.
Yeah.
So he was sort of like in the gray area, my Uncle Frank. And he said, so my father goes, you want to work for me? And that's when he made that statement. And he leaned over and he said to me, you know, if you want to work for me, going to jail is all part of the job. And now I'm 16 years old. You know, I'm so like brainwashed at this point. Like I said, yeah, fine, you know, and he put me to work.
Yeah. So you're young, you're running around, and I'm sure life was fun back then, right?
Oh, it was great,
You
yeah.
know, not like now where,
No.
out it, and you're running around. And when did you start to really, get your, rackets and start,
Pretty much right away. So what happened was my first job was in a blackjack game because there was no casinos back then. So
Okay.
the mob had dice games and blackjack games and poker games. So we had like little mini casinos.
So, I didn't interrupt. So when you saying dice games, I'm imagining in a basement somewhere in New York City,
No, it was
a bunch of guys just rolling the dice with money. Hey, I want you.
So if you saw the movie Bronx Tale, they had a
Yeah.
dice.
Yeah.
There was dice games like that, but our dice games were like mini casinos. So we had like real dice tables.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
we had them in after hour clubs, and we had them in the first dice game I ever worked in was in the Bronx on Gunville Road, and it was so there was a luncheonette that the mob owned, and then on top of the luncheonette they had an apartment, and in the apartment was a regular casino dice table, and it was all set up, and we had a dice game in there. Back then, so this was in the very, very early 70s, like 70, 71. So back then there was no casinos yet in Atlantic City, and so the mob had controlled all those crap games, which was big money. And when you're talking about a crap game with a $300 limit, like people would go in there and lose 20, 30,000 or win 20, 30. Like this was a major operation.
That's big money, yeah.
Right, and it was like a whole network of people that worked for you, and so we had the dice game in the apartment, and so the mob back then, so every family had a slot.
Okay.
So they broke up the day, so there was a dice game every day for 24 hours in different locations, and the mob, so our slot was 12 in the afternoon till 3. That was the Gambino. We were partners with the Genovese family, so we
Okay.
had a game in the Bronx at that time, and then the Lucchese family had a game in Brooklyn from 6 to 9, and then, and they broke up the day, and every family had something to do with the game. Like the game I worked in Gun Hill Road was my father, the Gambino family, and the Genovese family were the bankers. They banked the game.
Okay.
The Lucchese family, they had a Shylock up there.
Okay.
They Shylocked the game. The Colombo family wrote numbers. They had a number guy up
Okay.
there. So every family earned money with each dice game, and it used to be rolling. I mean, so here I am, it's 1970, I'm 17 years old, I'm getting paid $100 a day for 3 hours work.
No.
In 1970.
That's big money.
$100
That's
was a
big.
lot of
That's
money,
big money.
Yeah,
that's big money.
And then I put together, then what happened was I started putting together a little crew of my own, my cousin, my friend Sal, my friend Robert, and my father's godson, little Joe, and then we started just like in the movie Goodfellas, selling cigarettes,
Yeah.
writing numbers, we were like the minor leagues of, today that's dead, what I did back then is gone. Like,
You
it's
can't do
gone.
that?
Like they don't write, the government really took everything, they write the numbers, they got the lotto, they got sports, they got the apps.
Yeah, look at,
But back then, so I sold cigarettes, I sold swag, I wrote numbers, I did what Italian kids associates did back then.
Can you explain to our viewers what is the numbers when you say that?
So today it's the lotto.
Okay.
Okay, back then, so what happened was there was every day race, the track race, thoroughbred racing was huge back then. I mean, a lot of people, before all the cable and all that, people went to the racetrack.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, they came out with the results of the racetrack. So the 9 races, and then at the bottom was the track handle. The mutual handle was how much money the track took in that day, not paid out, it took in. So let's say today they took in $2,400,536. The number that day would be 536.
Okay.
It was the last 3 numbers of the, and it was 500 to 1.
Okay.
If you bet $1, you won 500.
Okay.
And we had number spots in all the stores, bodegas, and people writing numbers on their jobs, and that was the numbers. That was the numbers.
You would go and collect.
Right. I went to jail for that. I got arrested
Yeah.
for that.
What do you think back in the 70s, what do you think in a day you were earning on the numbers?
Well,
Bring it in.
we were,
Roughly.
it was like, so it went like this, there was a banker,
Okay.
and then there's a controller, and then there's runners.
Okay.
So now, I have, let's say I have 10 people that wanna write numbers, I'm a controller.
Okay.
I would go to you, you're a banker, right, you would give me 35% of the gross,
Okay.
all right? What I do with that 35%, I give the runner 25% of whatever he brings in, and I keep 10% for myself as the controller. So we were controllers,
Okay.
So the last business I worked for, which was my own man's, we were doing 90,000 a day.
Holy shit. Pardon my language.
Yeah, gross. So we were grossing 90,000 a day. Out of that 90,000, 35%, we retained 10% of that 90. So we were making 9,000 a day out of that business every day, 7 days a week. So that's how it ran. It went downhill. So there was the banker, and then there was the controller, and then there was the runners, and then there's the players.
Okay. And then you're kicking that, I'm assuming, up to the family.
Yeah, well, then, you know,
Everyone's
then,
going-
they get their 10%, you know, they get their Christmas money and all that.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, it's 1989, we're working in Jamaica, Queens, it's a predominantly
Yeah,
black
area,
neighborhood.
yeah.
But that's where they invented the number game, the black people
Black,
in Harlem,
yeah,
they
yeah,
invented
Frank
it.
Lucas.
Yeah,
and
they invented it,
Yeah.
way before him, but they invented it, the Italians actually stole it from them. You know, because that's what the mob did back then, you know, very violent. So anyway, so now it's 1989, and we have a number office in Jamaica, Queens, and that's where the runners would come and turn in their work and turn in their money, and we would break in everything. So what happened was this guy, Freddie Hott, there's a house up on the corner where Rastafarians lived, and they were under surveillance for selling marijuana. And this guy, Freddie, came to see us at the number office, and the drug enforcement guys recognized him, and they said, "What is this guy doing in this neighborhood?" And they called up the organized crime task force and said, "Listen, we just saw Freddie DiCagilio walk into this building." So now they put the building under surveillance, and they made us. They identified me, my friend Carl, and all of us. To make a long story short, they raid the building. I'm sitting at a table with my friend Carl, we're working.
Yeah.
We're counting. We had like 30,000 in front on the table, and like 5s and 10s. And
Yeah.
it was like $10 million, and we had a couch, and a couple of the runners were sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden we had boom, and the door came down with the metal thing, and they arrest us. The next day, it's headlines in the newspaper. $14 million a year number ring, John Gotti number ring, arrested, and they put it all on John.
They put it on,
Right.
yeah.
So now I get out on bail, and I go to the Bergen Hunt Fish Club,
Yeah.
and now he's breaking my balls. He goes,
Yeah.
"Hey, we made $14 million last year, where's my end?" 'Cause he had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
He got money, you know, he was the boss type,
Yeah.
but he had nothing to do with the number business on a day-to-day basis. Like nothing at all, and I said, "You want to break my balls? I'm going to go to jail for this." And you're going. He goes, "Where's my end? 14 million we made last year." Because you know they just threw his name. Yeah. And I went to jail for that. I took a plea. I got 1 1/3 to 4. Now it's legal. Then I got arrested for bookmaking.
Yeah.
I went to jail for that. Now it's legal. Not only is it legal, when I was just sitting down in your lobby, I was looking at the lines for a Sunday on the Hard Rock app. That's legal.
Yeah, I was telling my wife the other night, we were watching TV, and my wife likes to do the scratch off. It drives me insane. And I said, you know, I'm a sports freak. I said, I ought to teach you how to bet, because she's very lucky, how to bet sports games. And whatnot, and I was like, you know, I said, years ago this used to be totally illegal, and I said, the mob had it, and now it's legal. I said, everything that the mob used to do, in quote, other than murder and whatnot, you know, as far as money goes, was illegal, and now it's legal. The mob topped the government. And that's my opinion.
They did. They definitely did. They stole everything.
Yes.
They put us in jail and took it.
Yeah.
My father told me a long time ago, the government is the real mafia.
Absolutely, the biggest gangsters. You look at, you know, what's going on, and I mean, today, the government is the biggest gangsters. I mean, the biggest gang is, let my fans know, I'm not I'm a conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, the liberals.
Yeah.
That's the biggest gangsters I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
Right?
very true.
Yeah.
My daughter, she's a liberal.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's got to be an interesting. You guys live together?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
well, that's got to
we
be.
try not to talk
Yeah.
about. It's funny because she's like the only liberal in the whole family.
Well, I'll say this.
I have a gay niece that's more conservative than her.
I'll say this. I'm not. I have some liberal views. I'm more of an independent, but I have some. But I also believe in common sense.
Of course.
And anymore, it
Yeah,
seems,
right.
you know, I've got 2 kids, and my daughter, you know, and I'm a bit of a hothead.
Yeah.
My daughter came home from school last year, and I'll tell you this, and we'll get back to you
Yeah.
because you're the focus. She's eating dinner, and she don't want to eat something, and I said, no, you're going to eat it, you know. Well, she wanted ice cream, no, and I said, and she says, well, I learned in school, Dad, it's my body, it's my choice.
Whoa!
I had 2 days because it was a Friday. I was
You want right
fucking fuming when I got that principal on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they didn't even get to say hello. I was, you know, I'm gonna, fuming.
It's crazy because when I was in the mob and running around with, you know, we didn't care about, the government was the enemy, of course, like I didn't care who
Didn't matter who the president was?
It had no bearing on us unless they were coming after us. Like Reagan hated the mob.
Yes.
Because of his days in Hollywood, he knew what they were all about with the union. He hated the mob. He really went after the mob. Giuliani really went after the mob.
Yeah.
But the economy didn't affect us. As a matter of fact, the worse the economy was, the more money we made. Because we were, you know, we had the goods.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like today, like today, people ask me, what do you think the mob's into? I go, well, I really think if I was in the street today, what would be my biggest money makers would be cigarettes and knockoffs. That would be my biggest money.
What do you mean knockoffs?
You know, like knockoff bags, Gucci bags.
Oh, yeah.
But cigarette, I would say that I think cigarettes, because in New York, cigarettes are $17 a pack.
$17 a pack?
I would definitely, I would bet my life right now there's mob guys, old timers, not these kids, like guys my age, my generation, guys that are still in the street. I guarantee you a couple of them have major cigarette smuggling rings, major.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. So now the worse the economy is, the better we are, because the taxes go up, and we have the merchandise.
Yeah, the merch.
Yeah, we have the merch.
Are you taxing it?
It was always like that. Even like people would borrow more money, people would play more numbers.
Yeah.
Like we knew when the welfare checks came in. Like
Yeah.
when like in our number business, we knew when the checks came at the end of the month. Of course, our volume
Went up.
Right.
Now, explain to me the loan sharking, how that works. You know, like I want to go. It's not like I'm going to M&T Bank getting a loan.
Yeah.
If I don't pay them, they, you know, take
Yeah,
my
we
house
credit.
or car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So
pay
that's
you.
shallows too.
Yeah, I don't pay you.
might get
You
smacked
break
in
my
the
knee.
mouth,
You
yeah.
break my kneecap.
So
you know?
there's 2 types of loans. There's a big loan and a knockdown loan. So you would come to me, let's say you would come to me and say, I need to borrow $500.
Yeah.
So I'd give it to you for like 5 points, let's say, right? So what I would tell you is, okay, you could either give me $25 a week till you get to 500, or you could give me $125 a week for 5 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, so it's 2 types of loans. There's a knockdown loan and there's a big loan. So, I mean, basically you would want to take a knockdown loan because it's less big and you pay it off faster.
Yeah.
But I'd rather you take a big loan because you could give me $25 a week forever and still owe me $500.
Yeah.
So the more volume I have, the more money
Were
I'm
you
gonna
getting repeat customers?
make. Oh, yeah, no, all the time, yeah.
Drug addicts or just
No, we
just
didn't give money to anybody.
Yeah.
But we
you
had.
had to be known.
Yeah, but we had runners too. Like so you would come to me and say, I want to borrow 10,000. I would give it to you for 2 points, and then you turn it around and put it in the street for 5 points.
Oh,
So
okay.
the Shylocks. Yeah. So that's
You're making money, I'm making money.
right. So that's that.
No.
So that's where it is. Like when Paul Castellano became the boss, he was giving out to make guys $100,000 loans to be like a nice guy in the beginning. They would at a point for 1 point.
1 point, and that's better than you could do at any bank.
Never. Yeah.
So let me ask you about Paul. You know, I love the mafia history, and you know everybody's fascinated on Gotti, but you don't hear a lot. You hear about Paul, but what was he like? Did you ever get to meet him?
Yeah. I met him a few times. The first time I met him was at my wedding in 1977, October 2nd. I got married, and we had a big reception at the Lamia, and he came in with all the captains, and my father brought me over to the table, and he introduced me to him, you know, me and my wife Alice, and I met him. He was a killer, you know, he was dangerous.
Really?
But he wasn't a thug. Like John Gotti was a thug. My
yeah.
father was a thug. Tony Lee was a thug. You know, I mean, these guys, Angelo Quack, they were like gangsters.
Yeah.
He was like a rocketeer, but he was a killer. He'll have you killed in a minute. I mean, he gave the order for people to die.
Yeah.
He had no business telling you, hey, go kill this guy. You know what I mean? Like he had no problem doing that. But he was greedy, from what everybody tells me. Nobody really liked him. I met him in 1977.
They make fun of his nose. What did Gotti call him?
Gotti called everything. Everything. So I met him at the wedding. He gave me $500. He signed the card. Love Paul Castellano. My father ripped it up too bad. I couldn't even work money.
You could have been, oh my God, probably $1 million.
My father ripped it up and threw the card out.
Because he didn't respect him.
No, because he didn't want, the name, anybody
FBI.
Yeah, so he ripped it up and threw it out. It was $100 bills. That was a lot of money.
A lot of money back then. Probably like $5,000
Yeah,
now.
and that's the first time I met him. The second time I met him, unfortunately, my brother's best friend was murdered by the Colombo family. There was a murder across the street from my house. My brother's friend Tommy got murdered, and we had to go sit down in Brooklyn in Jimmy Brown's club, who was a captain.
Yeah.
And we sat down with Paul Castellano, and that's the second time I met him. And then I really never met him after that anymore, but I know he had a big sting with my father's partners, because then my father went to prison.
Yeah.
So my father and Tony ran the sheetrock union. That was their union, like they called it the Tapers Union, like that's all sheetrock, and they got a tape, so there's a union for that. So that was under the control of the Gambino family, and Tony and my father serviced that union. But really, my father serviced that union. Tony really was not hands-on with it, and my father went to prison, and Paul was into construction big time, and he sent to Tony Lee and about the union, and Tony didn't have like the right answers, and Paul berated him a little bit. And after that, Tony hated Paul Castellano.
Really?
And John hated Paul Castellano, and then like everybody knows the story. And Neil died. I'm at the funeral. I went to the funeral, and Paul never came to the funeral.
That's
so
messed up.
That was like the total disrespect. Like that was the end of Paul.
Yeah, and that was, Neil was keeping him alive. I mean.
Yeah, well, Neil was keeping him alive up to that point.
Yeah, up to that point, yeah.
They wanted to kill him way before that, and Neil was the doorstopper to that. So once Neil died, and then he didn't come to the funeral, like then it was kill or be killed, I spoke to Sammy the Bull about it a lot, and then at that point, John knew it was kill or be killed for him, and then he reached out to Frankie, the Chico, and Sammy to kill Paul.
I heard that was real tough. Chico?
Oh my God.
I heard like a pit bull.
Gangster.
Yeah.
He was
a gangster.
He was a good guy, but I liked him. We worked in crap games together, because we had a crap game with John on Mott Street, and he used to come up there every night. He had a piece of the game, so he was good. I got along really good with Frankie the Chico. He was a good guy, tough. His uncles were
Was that the one that, what was the one uncle's name that used to hang around with Gotti?
A couple of them. They were all straightened out. They had a nickname. I can't think of the nickname.
Butterass?
Yeah, Butterass.
Because I love Sammy.
You're right.
I love Sammy the Bull. So.
Sammy just got baptized,
Yes, I was raised, Catholic, growing up, and got back in the church a couple years ago.
Yeah, Sammy just got baptized.
And I'm happy for him, man. I mean, you're sitting with these big dogs. You're like, you guys are the mob elites. I was telling my wife, last night when I flew in, I was like, man, Gene loved I know his family, but he's like, him and Sammy the Bull and Michael Franzese, these guys got, millions of subscribers on YouTube.
It's funny because when Gene, in 1996.
I'll edit this, but I'm thirsty.
Yeah, me too. Look at this. It's funny because in 1996, in November of 1996, I went to prison.
Okay.
So I went to prison for bookmaking with New York State. I got a 2-4.
Okay.
While I'm in prison doing the bookmaking thing, I got indicted by the feds in Miami with Nicky Carrazzo, who was the active boss of the Gambino family.
Yeah.
I got indicted for racketeering in Florida. The marshals took me to Florida, and I took a plea, and I got 10 years. So now this is 1996. I don't get out till 04. So when I went to prison in 96, my son Albert was 13, and my cousin Gene was 12. They were very tight. They were kids. So when I went to jail, they were little kids.
Little kids, yeah.
Now, 8 years and 3 months later, I come out of jail, and Gene's 19, and he's like running, like he's with the banana family,
yeah.
and I'm in, and I go to get a haircut in Howard Beach, and he's in there getting a manicure, getting his eyebrows done. I went to jail. He was a little kid. I came out. He was this gangster, running around the streets with guns, and he paid for my haircut and my manicure, and but he wound up with the banana family. But if I never went to prison, he wouldn't.
You think he'd been with Gambino?
Yeah, no, he would have
never took care of that.
If he was going to be in the street, he would have came with us.
Yeah.
The only reason why I ended up with them is because my father was in prison, I was in prison, then my father died in '99,
Sorry.
so he just went with, and he went with Vinny Asaro, who was very good friends of ours at the time.
Yeah.
He was good friends with my uncle.
Was a wild man.
Who was Gene's grandfather. They went, they went back a long way. Vinny Asaro was actually in grammar school with my mother, so we had some history together,
Yeah.
So Gene levitated.
Tons of heist.
Yeah.
I mean,
Plus he had a little thing with the Gambinos, with my father's crew, so it was, but if I was home, he would have winded up.
You would have stripped, yeah.
But it went a different way, but it's comical because when I went away, he was a little kid, and I came out, he was like crazy.
Yeah. So back to you,
Yeah.
You're in the life, were you, and I'm not here to talk about God, we're here to talk about you, but were you out on the street when the Castellano hit happened, or were you in?
Yeah. No, so what happened was, I was actually sitting in my house watching TV.
Okay.
I didn't know it was coming off.
Yeah.
But so I'm in my house watching TV, and all of a sudden it comes on the screen, like, they cut off the show, and, Paul Castellano murdered him, and I said, holy shit, and I jumped up off the couch, and I ran into the kitchen, because, we had regular
The
phones.
phone was on the wall.
Yeah. So I called Tony Lee up, my father's partner, because my father was in prison. I go, they just clipped Paul. And by the tone of his voice, he went, yeah, I know, and I said, damn, he knew, I just knew by, I knew by the tone of his voice, I said, oh, all right, and I hung up the phone, and then the next day, he told me, what happened, and then my father now is in prison, he wants, oh, what's going on, come and see me, come and see me, so after they made John the official boss, we went to see my old man, and Tony Lee told him how it happened, and John's the boss, they voted John the boss, and my father was funny because they knew John Gotti since he was a teenager in East New York, and my father looked at Tony and he goes, are we talking about the same John that we know? He was because it was such in the mob, it was really a genius plan, how they did it and where they did it in broad daylight, it was. And my father was so impressed with the way the hit went down.
And the fence didn't know who did it until Sammy flipped. Up until then,
they assumed.
They assumed, but they could never prove it.
And then right after that, he had a Christmas party in the El Carib, this catering hall in Brooklyn, and I went to that Christmas party. That was there was 300 guys there, and the only females that were there were the waitresses, the whole Gambino family was there. All the maid guys were there, all the captains, most of the soldiers, and the associates that were going to be proposed.
Okay.
So I was one of them, and I was at the party. That was his first Christmas party right after the cast. Not maybe a week or two after the Castellano hit.
And I have to ask, because you knew him, the ego. Did it grow after the Castellano hit, or was it always the same?
Well, he always had a lot of charisma.
Oh, always did.
But
and that's why I respected that.
It took off after he became the boss. Well, really, I mean, the media really made him the Dapper Don. To us, he was just John. What I mean? We had a different relationship than a lot of other people because we all grew up together.
Yeah.
I knew him. We knew him before he was John Gotti. I knew him since I'm a kid.
Yeah.
He was just an associate. I knew him through the whole thing. I knew him when he was associate. I knew him when he became a soldier. I knew him when he became a captain, and I knew him when he became the boss. So we went through the whole thing.
Yeah, in his family, not a lot of people know this, but I did some research. I believe your family and his go back to roots in Italy. Wasn't the town named Santa d'Agata or something?
So my grandfather and his grandparents and his parents come from the same town as my family in Naples. his father used to call my father Paisan all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
because they were from the same. He used to hit my old man up for money. Hey, Paisan! He was a character. John's father was a character.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. He was funny, really good guy. And he would always call my father Paisan. And yeah, they came from Sandaga to Gotti, and the Gotti family took the name of the town. So really, we don't even really know what his real last name is.
Yeah, because
I never knew his family. I always knew they were from the same town. They were Paisans from the same town in Naples. But I didn't know the name of the whole name of the town until when I was in prison. I sent away from my grandfather's records to Naples, and when I got all the records from Naples, I saw the name of the town, Sandaga de Gotti, and I said, "Oh wow, the Gottis, they took us." So back then on Ellis Island, a lot of Italians took the names of the town because they couldn't announce the people that couldn't pronounce their names. It's in The Godfather. They gave him Corleone. Because of the town.
Corleone.
So,
Yeah.
So we were, and we were Scorpios, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So that was another thing we had in common. He used to like that we were, him and I, and his brother Genie also was a Scorpio.
I heard he was a trip.
Yeah,
listen to Sammy's stories.
Yeah,
And,
no.
you got any Gene Gotti stories?
Oh, he was a funny bastard.
I heard, man, like, leave the car and
He
drive,
used to-
get out and walk up.
He used to tell me, when me and my brother John were kids and we ran into your father, we didn't know if we should shake his hand or duck. Yeah, so yeah, he was a funny. He used to tell Tony, "Yeah, you were nothing but a window breaker, so you hooked up with Andy." He used to tell Tony that. He was a funny, but he was a good guy. I liked Jimmy. I mean, there was a lot of guys. Pete, I know he was a piece of shit.
That's, I was not obviously in the life, but everybody says that.
Yeah, he was
No
no
use
fucking
for it.
good.
He was the one that was in the big heroin dealing, right?
No,
Gene
yeah.
Gotti, that's right.
He was no fucking good, and his brother Richie was another
Richie?
fucking piece of shit. He was no fucking good either. Vinny I liked. Vinny, the younger brother, him and I got
Holy
along
fuck,
really
how many
well.
brothers did Gotti have? I mean, he put
Well,
all.
he had one brother that moved to California.
Okay.
He left New York. He didn't want no part of him. He went to California. He's still out in California. And then they had Pete, John, Jeannie, Richie, and Vinny.
Okay.
Yeah, and two sisters that had nothing to do. His sisters, I never really met his sisters. I don't think his sisters really had any use for them. But as far as the brothers are concerned, Jeannie and John were the best. Vinny I liked. Vinny was my age. We got along good. Pete and Richie I had no use for. They were just no fucking good.
How about his kids? The Gotti kids, little John.
I mean, John Jr. I got along with. You know what I mean?
Andy Crawford, though, that is cooperative.
He can say whatever he wants. Once you sit down with the FBI and you proffer whether people got arrested or not, you will cooperate.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line.
No.
From what I understand now, from the people I still talk to that are in Ozone Park, his Uncle Genie has nothing to do with him. Like,
really?
Shunned him. Yeah, which I knew that was going to happen. He had nothing to do with him. He has nothing to do with him because he profited with the TV and the book and the movie and all that shit.
Yeah.
So, but I got along good with him. I mean, he wasn't my cup of tea. He was a lot younger than me. But I mean, I had a couple of incidents with him, good and bad, But I got along with him. I got along great with this guy Johnny A. Light, who now, Johnny A. Light was a gangster, killer.
Big.
Johnny A. Light was. He could say whatever he wants about John. He wouldn't have been shipping out. Johnny A. Light did all this dirty work, brought him all kinds of money. You know what I mean? Was the one that everybody feared Johnny A. Light.
Didn't fear good. Well,
They feared John to a point because he was senior son.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say he killed the guy on Jamaica Avenue. He stabbed him. He was no angel. Like he makes it out like he's so innocent. He's no angel. He was no angel. He was a criminal. He was a drug dealer, a murderer, criminal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, back to you, because you and I have a lot of things in common. I don't know if you know this or not, and I see Reform Gangster.
That's my podcast.
Yeah. No, we'll plug it for that. What you got into the drugs. I'm a recovering addict.
All right. Congratulations.
I was
How much time you got?
6 years.
Oh. All right.
See, I had a good life growing up. I was a spoiled brat. I played sports. I liked to party. I didn't do no drugs in high school. I drank. I wouldn't even smoke weed. I mean, I just, played football, and football players don't do drugs. Well, when I got out and I got a real job and I got into the real world, I was 19 years old. I'm lifting weights. I'm starting to do steroids, and one night we used to, I live in a small town in the country, so I'm not in New York City, going to this bar, and I was tired, and this guy says, hands me, towards me this rock and says, go in the bathroom and take some of that, that'll wake you up. And I'm like, well, what is this shit? And he was like, oh, that's some coke. 19 years old, never done it before. Was, I know people that had done it, and when I did it, I mean, I loved it. And I loved it. It was the best feeling ever. But I wasn't really, I didn't like uppers, unless I was drinking, because I'd geek out. I was that guy hiding under the table. But when the pain pill epidemic came out, the opiates and whatnot, that got me. I mean, I used to do about 3 Oxy 80s a day.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then I got into shooting heroin.
So for me, like I said earlier, I started smoking weed in the 60s. You know what I mean? When I was 13, and and then I was allowed at 16. I was allowed in bars.
Yeah.
And drink. Because now I'm Fat Andy's son, and I grew up in a bar. My father always owned bars.
Really?
And I would sit in the bar stool with a Shirley Temple. So I was very comfortable in a bar.
Yeah.
But I never, and then I started hanging out in bars and drinking, but I had no issues. And then my father knew a lot of celebrities, and then in the late 60s, he got introduced to Jay Black from Jay and the Americans.
Yeah.
They became tremendous friends, and he had a lot of hit records, and my father was doing stuff with him, and I was 19 also at the time, and he was doing some shows in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And he took me with him. So now here I am, I'm 19, I'm with this major celebrity
hanging
back
out.
then, hanging like he has a big suite, like he had groupies. I mean, it was like a crazy time. I mean, the guy had a record chart, and like This Magic Moment was in the top 10.
Yeah.
He was on top of it, and he was, I saw this guy on TV when I was a little kid singing. So anyway, I'm in Puerto Rico with him, and he has this big suite. And before each concert, he would sing opera and warm up his voice, and I would go up to the room, and they were drinking wine and smoking weed. The first night and the second night. The third night, I walk in there, and they're all standing around the table, and I walk up to the table, and there's this white powder on the table, and I asked this guy, Kenny, what is that? And he goes, it's cocaine, you want some? And I go, yeah. And he handed me the straw, and I took 2 lines, and like you said, it was instant love affair.
Love affair, yeah.
That was it, and I used that substance from that day at 19 till I was 35 years old.
Okay.
But it wasn't an issue in the beginning. It was still recreational.
Recreational, yeah.
I went back to New York. It was the disco era.
Yeah.
I was hanging out in Manhattan in the discos, doing blow on the weekends. It was very expensive.
Yeah.
Very, very expensive. And they said the beautiful people were the only ones that were doing it. And they were right, because it was only in the clubs in Manhattan, and we would do it on the weekends, and I always had a connection, so people gravitated towards us because they knew we always had a package, and then it just, the disease of addiction, progressive, cunning, baffling, and then, I started blowing coke and the weekends, and then during the week, and then,
Now you need it in the morning.
well, I really wasn't. I never used that. Like I would wake up in the morning and I wouldn't crave cocaine, but what happened was I would go out and then I would have a few drinks and then I would get lit up from the alcohol, and then the next thing you know, you're looking for blow, right? And then I'm in all these clubs, and then I went to prison. I went to prison in '78. I went to prison for 2.5 years. I got out at the end of '80, and my brother was hanging out in this rock club called the Ritz, which is now Webster Hall in Manhattan, and I started hanging out in there, and all the celebrities were hanging out, and I was hanging out with Andy Warhol, like, forget it, oh my God, everybody, Keith Richards, and we were blowing coke with all of them, and it was just a crazy time.
Yeah.
And
Fun time.
Yeah. It was still,
nobody's blowing coke and having a bad time.
It was still the recreational, but then, then like you would know, like people in recovery know, I crossed over this imaginary line into like addiction, and the next thing I know, like I'm blowing coke I'm just blowing coke, and then I started freebase, and then someone introduced me to freebase. Then my father got arrested.
Really?
He got 40 years, and then I would say from '83, unfortunately from the year my son was born until '88, were like really dark years as far as my addiction was concerned. Those were the worst years because I started freebasing and and I was going back and forth. My life was like very chaotic because my father was going on trial 3 times in Miami, and I had this infant and a wife, and I was going back and forth from New York to Miami, and what I was paying $120 for in New York was only $40 in Miami. So it was just a crazy, insane time.
Yeah, because Miami, in the 80s, the cocaine game.
And then my life just became about the next one, you know what I mean? And the next one, and the next one, and then it was bad. It was bad. It got bad, and then in '88, I just woke up one day, man, and my father was. And what happened was I went to visit my father. I really never talked about this story much because I don't know. I went to visit my father, and I was 140 pounds. I was like skin and bones, and
shit.
And he comes in the visiting room, and he's not talking, you know, and he's just staring at me, and you know, I got defensive, and I go, "Is there a problem here?" You know, yeah. He goes, "When I look at you, I'm gonna go back to my cell and hang myself," he told me, because I was like beat up, you know. So that started the ball rolling, you know. Then I just woke up one day and I was done, you know. Like I didn't know what to do. And there was this commercial on TV back then about it was a nose, and under the nose a plane went up the nose, and a house went up the nose, and a car went up the nose.
Yeah.
And it said, if you have a cocaine problem, call 1-800-COCAINE. And I didn't know what to do. And I came out of the bathroom, and I remember I was sitting on the couch, and I was going, "Oh God, how did this happen to me?" And my wife Alice at the time, she got nervous. She goes, "What can I do for you?" And I told her, "Call 1-800-COCAINE." And believe that commercial saved my life. This woman, I still talk to this woman, Joan DeVonzo. I'll never forget. Answered the phone, and she was in recovery, and she got me a bed in the treatment center.
In Vermont.
I had no money,
Yeah.
so I called up Tony Lee, my daughter's namesake, my father's partner. He comes to my house.
Okay.
And
And
he comes to my house, and I tell him, he knows what's going on, and I tell him, I want to go to the treatment center, but I have no money, and I have no insurance, and it's $250 a day. That was a lot of money.
That's a lot of
at
money.
88. And he said, he used to call me Sonny. That was like his pet name for me. And he said to me, "Sonny, I'm going to pay for this, but as far as I'm concerned, you're too far gone." I said, "Well, I got to try. I'm going to die." I knew at that point
because the drugs in the mob, they don't mess.
No.
Well, you know, they do, but
listen, everybody was blowing coke. Everybody was
blowing coke.
Everybody outside of, I would say, my father and John Gotti and Tony Lee.
You don't think? Gotti?
They might have told you. I didn't even think my old man took a few puffs once in a while. But everybody was blowing coke.
Yeah.
Not everybody becomes addicts. Unfortunately, that was the hand I was dealt.
Yeah.
That was just the way I was wired.
Me too, man.
I blew coke with everybody.
I'm an addictive personality,
Right.
you know.
So I went to this treatment center, and I got clean, and I came out, you know, and I tell this story a lot. I came out and nobody shunned me, nobody chased me. John never chased me, you know, for all the haters out there. Nobody chased me, nobody belittled me, nobody abused me. I got out of the treatment center on a Wednesday. On Saturday, John used to eat lunch in the Bergen Up Fish Club in Old Court every Saturday afternoon. So I got out of treatment on Wednesday. I went to my first NA meeting on Thursday night, clean in Queens. Became my home group for over 20 years. I met my sponsor there, Stevie.
I saw a picture.
Right, right. He sponsored me for over 20 years. And then Saturday, I went to the Bergen Up Fish Club to see John with Tony Lee for lunch. I walked in, he sees me, he kisses me hello, and he takes me outside. And never forget, he takes me outside and he looks at me and he goes, "So you got a beat?" Not yelling at me, not calling me names, but he said, and I says, "Well, I gave him, I'm not going to do any today." Yeah. He goes, "All right," and then he looks at me and goes, "Do you need anything?" So I looked at him, I said, "Well, I don't have a car, because I wrecked my car. You know how it is when you're using it. I wrecked my car. You don't have a car?" I said, "No, I wrecked it, and Alice, I don't have a car." She made a phone call, and he tells me, "Go to this place on Atlantic Avenue," and the guy's waiting for me there. It's a car lot. So Tony Lee takes me there. I walk in and I tell the guy, John, he goes, "Take whatever car you want." He told me. So now I'm looking for a Cadillac. You know what I mean? Fuck it, right? You don't have no Cadillacs, but I find this beautiful 4-door white Bonneville, red. It's gorgeous, because back then Bonnevilles were like really nice cars, you know? Like they were like Cadillacs, like the next round under.
Yeah.
So I take this Bonneville, I go back to the Bergen Up Fish Club, I show him the car and everything, and he hands me $2,000, he hands me money. He goes, "Here, take this." He says, "There's $2,000 there." He goes, "I want you to come here every Saturday with $100 and don't disappoint me." I said, "All right." Now, this is the boss of the Gambino.
Yeah.
This is like the most powerful man in America,
Yeah.
outside the president of the
Yeah,
United States. You know, and he's not yelling at, he's rooting for me. Like, I got goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
He's rooting for me, like, to get clean, because I had potential. Like, he knows that in the mob life, I knew the game. Like, I was, I was a pedigree, like a Fat Andy's son, like I was
Yeah.
like, and they knew that I knew the game and I could be good at it, you know what I mean? So by me getting back on the horse was good for everybody,
Yeah.
including myself. And that was my goal. Unfortunately, how crazy as I was, my goal was to be a gangster again, clean. Like, that was my goal, to get clean.
Yeah,
like,
get
not
clean
get
so you could get
yeah,
made, right? Yeah.
not have no spiritual awakening, you know what I mean? I wasn't ready for no fourth step yet. Yeah. So he gave me $2,000 and I went back, I gave him 100, and next week I gave him 100, and in the third week, he asked me if I owed him any more money, and I said, yeah, I owe you 1,700. He goes, okay, keep it as a gift. And that was it, so that, and then I got clean, and I've been clean, I'm coming up on, I picked up, that was in February '88, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but I did pick up 3 times after that, and then in '89, in January 12th of '89, I surrendered, and I've been clean ever since. I'll be clean 36 years.
That's awesome.
This January.
That's awesome.
But people helped. He helped me. Tony helped me. Stevie helped me. My sponsor helped me. I went, but I still wasn't willing to change or anything. I just wanted to get clean.
That's what I was sitting here. Yeah, you weren't doing drugs, but you weren't above.
I was making meetings and I had commitments, but I was, I was in therapy. Like, I just didn't want to use them more. Like, no matter what, I did not want to use it anymore, because that brought me a lot of pain. I did not want to put chemicals in my body, any chemical, alcohol, but I wasn't ready for no spiritual journey or anything like that. I wanted to be a gangster.
Yeah,
yeah. And then now I'm clean. Now I'm making a lot of money. Like, I'm making like crazy money, like more money than I ever made in my life personally. Like, I got my own crew. I'm proposed now to get made. Like, in the mob life, things are happening, but like, I still, but I went to prison again. Now I'm clean, I get clean, and then in '89, and then in '90, December of '90, a year later, I get arrested for numbers. I go to jail in '91, I get out, and now I'm clean. I'm in '92, I get out in '92, and now I'm in the street making crazy money, and then I get arrested again in '95, and now I'm clean 8 years, and I'm in Attica. Like, I'm going, what the fuck am I doing? And that started the ball rolling. Me thinking, like, maybe I should change my life.
So when Sammy Gotti, did Frankie Lacasio, you were locked up when they got pinched?
Oh yeah, no. I was home. So they got pinched in I got arrested in the beginning. I got arrested for policy right before they got arrested. So I was out on bail. They got arrested in the Raven. I was out on bail. When Sammy cooperated, I was in prison. Sammy decided to cooperate, I was in prison. I found out, so I was in prison with this guy Bobby, the Jew. He was a wise guy, that's his nickname. He's not Jewish, he's Italian. Maybe he was cheap, I don't know. But they called him Bobby the Jew. So anyway, he was a wise guy, and we used to walk the yard every night, him and I. And I'm waiting for him one night to come out to go for a walk, and he's late. So finally he comes out and he goes, oh my God, he goes, that guy, we used to call John that guy. He goes, that guy's co-defendant flipped. I said, who, Frankie? I thought it was Frankie Loke. He goes, no, Sammy. I said, Sammy? I was in shock. And that's how I found out Sammy cooperated, and then John got convicted.
Did you know it was over when, I don't know, the tapes and everything? I've always wanted to ask somebody this, I don't know if I'll ever get to interview Sammy the Bull, hopefully, but did you, when they got pinched and all the evidence is done, when Sammy cooperates, did you know it's over for John, he's done?
Oh yeah, once I found out.
Was that the model?
Once I found out, my exact words were when Bobby told me Sammy flipped, it was Sammy, I said, John's dead, John's finished.
Yeah.
Once I knew it was Sammy, and then I spoke to Sammy about it personally,
Yeah.
And I knew the tapes were bad.
Yeah.
I knew how John talked. John, he had no problem talking about people. Like whether he meant to throw Sammy under the bus or not. But when Sammy heard the tapes and the things John said about it,
broke his heart.
Yeah, Sammy.
Do you think it broke his heart?
Yeah, definitely. And listen, people cooperate because they don't want to spend the rest of their lives in jail, but it's more to it than that. Like, he felt betrayed. Like, I felt betrayed too, but not on the same level as him. He was an underboy. But I felt betrayed too by things that happened to me after my father died. After my father died, they took everything. That my mother was getting Meals on Wheels. I was in prison. Nobody was looking out for my family. I mean, my father gave his sweat and blood and tears to the Gambino family. So, you know, I could understand the betrayal part that Sammy felt, you know what I mean? And you know, he cooperated.
So so we'll finish up here in a little bit, but you go, you know, and obviously, you know, you've told this story a lot, you know, just touch on it, you know, you did a piece of work, with your you know, to your sister's husband at the time and whatnot, but what did you get in trouble for to ultimately say, cooperate and say, I'm done?
So, in 1988, we killed my brother-in-law.
Yes.
Okay, for whatever he did with my mother. When I got out of prison in '04, so now between then and done, people started cooperating. This guy Peter Sicaro, who was my brother-in-law's partner. Anyway, people started cooperating that were close to us. And when I got out in '04, and in '05, I got arrested for my brother-in-law's murder. In a RICO. They indicted me and two other, and Skinny Dom, who was a captain, for a RICO with the murder. It was gambling. The predicate acts were gambling and extortion and murder. So now I get arrested for the murder. I get out on $3 million bail. My father-in-law put up his whole company. My friends put up their houses. My mother put up our house. So I got out on bail, and nobody's looking out for me. I have no money to pay a lawyer. I need like $25,000 for the lawyer. I'm having co-defendant meetings, and I'm seeing things are not like going one way. Like, I was the last person with him. Like, I picked him up, and then nobody ever saw him anymore. So I'm having a co-defendant meeting, and my co-defendant, Skinny Dom, asks like a question, like he was the one that shot him, actually shot him.
Yeah.
Right? And we're in this meeting, and he goes, "What day did this guy disappear?" So they say the date, June something of 1988. He goes, "I was in Florida that week. I got paperwork saying I was in Florida that week." And I'm looking at him going like, what the fuck is going on here? In Florida, right? So now we walk out of the lawyer's office, and it's just him and I go, "What are you talking about? You in Florida?" He goes, "I got a travel agent that's going to give me paperwork saying I was in Florida that week." I says, "Well, what about me?" He goes, I can't, the guy can only do it for one person. I said, "Me?" I said, "All right," so I don't say nothing. Then what happened was, now I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence, and I'm on the fence, and I'm thinking about cooperating, but every time I think about it, I see my father's face. He hated cooperators. He's probably still mad at me. And I would pick up the phone, and I would get nervous, and I'd hang it up. And then a week would go by, or 2 weeks would go by, and I'd do it again. I'd pick up the phone, and I'd get this feeling, and I hang up the phone. Couldn't do it, couldn't make the call. Almost a year later, I go, now I see they're trying to throw me under the bus. I have a feeling that nobody's helping me out with money to pay the lawyer. I just had a bad feeling, and I really wasn't willing at that point to spend the rest of my life in prison for that mob. If my father was alive, I would have never cooperated. I would have never thought about it. If Tony Lee was alive with John, I would have never done it, because I would never implement them on a murder. Never, because John okayed it. So it was all, everybody was guilty of murder. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine in the neighborhood, a knockaround guy that took his life in his hands. I'm in his house, and he tells me, "Fucking call the government. Like, what are you waiting for?" And I looked at him, "What are you, fucking crazy, telling me something like that?" Like, if I could have had this guy killed for that. I go, "What are you, fucking crazy, telling me something like that?" I go, first of all, you shouldn't talk to me like that. And second of all, I can't disrespect my father like that. He goes, "Disrespect your father. Your father's dead." He goes, "You did everything your father ever, you killed somebody for your father. What are you, crazy?" He goes, "What do you want to spend the rest of your life in prison for these people?" And I still couldn't do it. The last straw was, I had some legal issues that could have helped me in pre-trial motions.
Could have helped you?
Right, big time, could have helped me.
Yeah.
So I hired an attorney to do my pre-trial motions, right? they have to get help from my co-defendant's lawyer. My co-defendant's lawyer tells them no. Because if you expose this now, it's not gonna help Dominic at trial. I said, yeah, so they said, yeah, but it doesn't help Anthony at trial, it only helps Dominic.
Yeah.
This lawyer calls me and tells me, listen, you need to call the government. These people are gonna throw you under the bus. I said, are you kidding me? They said, no, listen, save yourself, you're a young guy. Call the government. I hung up the phone. The next morning I woke up. I had the card for the FBI guy, Jerry Conrad. I took the card, I still couldn't call. I took the card, I gave it to my daughter's mother, my wife Valerie. I gave her the card. I said, when you get to work, call this number and tell this guy to come see me. And she did.
And he came inside.
He was on me. And that was it. I cooperated. That was it. I surrendered like the drugs. I surrendered.
How did it feel?
It felt like a relief. I felt relieved. I felt relieved. I felt like calm, you know?
And then you got placed in Woodsack.
Yeah, not right away.
Not
First
right
they moved me out of my house in Comac to a safe house in Point Pleasant, New Jersey.
Okay.
Which my daughter thought was a haunted house. It was a big house on the ocean. It was kind of haunted.
Yeah.
And they moved me, and then they moved me to another safe house in Pennsylvania, in the Poconos.
Yeah, I know
They moved me to the Poconos.
It's a beautiful area.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And then from there I went to Michigan.
Okay.
And then I went to the Witness Protection Program. Then I went out to, I changed my name. I went out to Idaho.
There's no way you fit in the fucking Idaho.
There's
no way.
Want to hear a funny story about Idaho? When I go to Starbucks with a newspaper, right?
Yeah.
And I'm drinking coffee and I'm reading the newspaper, and there's 3 women at a table. Nice looking women, like, you know, well manicured. Of course, I was in a town called Coeur d'Alene. It was kind of a high-end town, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was beautiful, in the Cascade Mountains. And these 3 women were sitting at a table, right? And I get up to leave, and one of them says, excuse me, could you come here for a second? So I walk over, and she looks at me, she goes, are you from New York? So I look at her, I go, why would you say that? I haven't opened up my mouth. She goes, why would I say that? She goes, you got a jogging suit on. You look like you just walked off The Sopranos. I had a jogging suit on. I didn't know. You know?
Yeah.
She goes, look at you. Look what you were dressed like. She goes, it looks like you're in The Sopranos. You got a jogging suit on. And they like adopted me. They were mad. They took me home. They took me, we went to the movies together. They took me for pedicures and manicures. Yeah, they like adopted me. Yeah.
No kidding.
Cool. So I lived in Idaho for a while. Then I lived in Washington State, and then I signed myself out of the Witness Protection Program, and I went back to Michigan.
Michigan's a nice state.
And then from Michigan, it was all right. I didn't really care for it.
The cold,
there's no ocean. It was I don't know, the fucking roads.
I'm not going to say where you live now. I mean, but you.
Oh, I lived in Florida. It's all right. So what happened?
What made you migrate to Florida?
Now I'm in Michigan, and I get a call from a friend of mine that ran a treatment center in Florida.
Okay.
And he tells me, now I'm 60 years old. At the time I was 60 years old, and he tells me, listen, I just spoke to the owner of my treatment center, and he wants to offer you a job as a counselor. We think you would be a really good counselor. I said, counselor? I said, what the fuck do I know about being a counselor? He goes, listen, man, he goes, with your recovery and everything you overcame and your life experience, we really think you would be a really good counselor for your whole life experience. Because you got to go back to school. I said, school? He goes, yeah, but we'll pay for it. So I said, let me think about it. So I thought about it. I discussed it with my daughter. I discussed it, with my ex-wife, and I decided to do it. And I got my car with me and my cat Mikey, and I drove to Florida, and I went back to school, and I became a counselor.
Left your family behind in Michigan?
I left my daughter behind. She was in Michigan State at the time.
Okay.
She was graduating. She was in college. My son was in New York. And I came to Florida and I became a counselor. That was 10 years ago. I'm still working now I'm working in a detox.
Yeah. What's that like nowadays? Fentanyl crisis.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's terrible. And even the business changed. It's all about money now. It's not like it was 10 years ago. It's really.
Oh, it's all about.
Yeah, I'm ready. Really, I'm at the end of my career when it comes to that. I'd rather just go to meetings and sponsor people.
I'm trying to get a house.
Yeah. Also living.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I want to. It's an accountability crib. Is what and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my own company, and I'm doing tree work, and I'm going to give people jobs because my idea is a halfway house. people go to a halfway house because they're forced to.
Yeah.
I don't think they're required to after sentencing. So I want to have a place where people want to get help, that want to come in, and you know, you teach an addict how to live again, how to get a job, a routine, waking up in the morning, going to work, you know, not getting high, and helping. So it's something that I've always wanted to do, and you know, that's why I started a podcast and whatnot, is to tell stories, to get, you know, those stories out there, but to help people. I mean, addiction's a disease. I truly believe that.
Definitely.
And if I can help one person, I've made a difference. I mean, I used to live on the street, man, and put a needle in my arm. So to get where I'm at, to get where I'm at now, I mean, fuck. I mean, I'm blessed. I'm really blessed. And you know, people, you know, money and this and that. I've had the money, I've had it, but you know, to be alive today and how I used to be, I couldn't have done this. Couldn't have done this 6, 7 years ago.
I mean, come on. Listen. First of all, when I decided to cooperate, that was a leap of faith. I mean, you know, that was like that went against everything I ever believed in, the way I was raised. You know what I mean? Like I still think my father's dead, that he's mad at me. You know what I mean? Like, but I have to live with that. You know, but I look in the mirror because I know if he was alive, I wouldn't have cooperated. Not that, you know,
Where would you be if he was alive?
I probably would be in jail.
Yeah, you wouldn't be sitting here with this fellow.
And the reason, so what happened was now I get a call. Now I'm in Florida. I'm a counselor. I had no idea about podcasts or this and that. Like, I get a call one day, and my friend tells me, listen, Johnny Ali's trying to contact you. You want to talk to him? So I go, of course I want to talk to him. So give him my number. So now my friend gives Johnny Eli my number. Johnny Eli calls me, and this is when him and my cousin Gene first started their podcast. He calls me, goes, listen, I got a guy in London, this guy Max Stern, they're doing a show on National Geographic. They keep hearing things about you, they want to talk to you. I said, they want to talk to me? I said, all right, let him call me. So this guy from England calls me, and we have a conversation. He goes, you got to be in the show. Now I got to reveal myself. Nobody knew who I was. Everybody thought I was. Nobody even called me Anthony because my name is. So now the only person that knew who I was the guy I worked for, Stevie. He was the only person that knew who I was. That treatment. Nobody else knew who I was. So now I got to reveal myself. So I got a discussion with my family because now I got to reveal who I am, and I decided to do it. Because then I decided, you know what? It's time to get my story out there because for two reasons. One, maybe I could help somebody, and two, maybe I could earn a living doing it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I did the show. It was a hit. I did the show. Narco was the mob. Drugs, Bugs, and the Dapper Don. That was the title of my episode. Me and Eli do the show.
Okay.
And then
I haven't seen that.
And then one thing, then I got a manager guy reached out to me, Pasquale.
Did you know him?
No, Johnny Eli introduced me to him. He was Johnny Eli's manager at the time. And then him and I hooked up, and I signed a contract with him. And then I did Vlad TV. That was big. Vlad.
Oh my God. Well, and you know, good guy. Vlad, a good guy.
He's a good guy. He tried to get under my skin a little bit, but I was ready for, because Johnny Eli already told me what he was going to pull. He tried to get me like rat. He tried to get me like mad, like I don't know. He tried to start not a conflict, but I don't know.
Well, I heard Sammy the Bull almost whooped his ass the first time they did it.
But it was a real. My daughter was with me. It was a really good interview.
You take her with you on that? That's
good.
That's good. No, that's awesome.
She likes when I go to LA, but she loves.
Well, she's off there. Yeah, I mean,
her peoples are in LA.
Did you ever? You did Soft White Underbelly.
Yeah,
I like that guy.
Just a great guy.
Great guy.
That was a big. But I think Vlad, to do Vlad, sort of started the ball rolling.
Yeah, I figured when I was trying to.
I just did 1 million views on Vlad.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I'm new at this, I mean, just.
They all started somewhere. And then I got my own podcast, of course.
Yeah, we're gonna plug it here. Before you go, two people I want to ask you about. Michael D. Leonardo, they call him Mikey Scottis.
I know him well.
Good, bad, indifferent?
No, I mean, listen, I like Mikey. He doesn't get along with Sammy. I like Sammy.
Yeah.
Sammy, are really good friends. I did a lot of good things with Sammy. Our shows were great.
Table in the Back
was really good.
That's how I found you,
actually. It
actually.
helped me get subscribers. It helped me get interviews. But him and Mikey are beefing. But Mikey's good. I like him. He's a friend. I have never done anything with him yet, but I know him from the street. you know, we're big Yankee fans.
Yeah.
But I have nothing bad to say about Mikey Scuzz. He's all right with me.
And, Joey Merlino. What about this guy? I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm a no-name podcast, but give me time. I have work ethic. So I'm fascinated with the mafia life. And I reached out to Merlino, you know, he's in Philly. I don't live far from there. And he hooks me up with that asshole little snuff. And I'm talking to him, and he says, well, how many subscribers do you got? And I said, look, I'm no Joe Rogan, you know, but give me time. He says, okay, for you, 15,000. I said, 15,000? I said, who the fuck does this guy think he is? I said, nobody's, I said, come on. I said, Sammy the Bull ain't even paying 15 grand. I mean, and no, I don't know what, you know, but, I mean, who does, Merlino was the Philly boss. I said, he was only the Philly boss. He wasn't, you know, running New York City. I said, there's a big difference. And, you know, and he's like, oh, well, fuck, yeah, you know, whatever, and whatnot. But that guy seems to have a lot of hatred in his heart, and that he's weighed down by anger and whatnot. And then I heard that he robbed people and was a punk and terrible human being.
So, I had a relationship, so him and my old man hooked up in prison, in Allenwood prison, federal prison. My old man loved him, but said to him he needs to stop gambling. For some reason, my old man took a liking to him, and I liked him too. Because you got to understand, in the mob, what he accomplished was major.
Yeah.
Like him and his friends took over a city.
Yeah.
Like they took over a city through violence.
Through violence, yeah.
I mean, he's a murderer. Well, he could say whatever he wants. He murdered people.
Yeah.
You know, he got found not guilty, but that doesn't mean he wasn't guilty.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So he hooked up with the Gambino family, and I had met him. I went to Philly and brought him messages from the Gambino family, and I met him. I mean, I know the guy. He would used to call my house. Like, I just found my old phone book, and I have his phone number in my phone book, Joe Philly. Like, that's him. Now he's talking bad about me, like making I don't know me, and he's not in the he's not active. He cannot be an active participant in the mob and have a podcast. It ain't happening. So this is just my belief. He knows the government was never going to leave him alone. Once they know you committed an act of violence, they're relentless to get you. Like even they were relentless with me, and I was a nobody compared to Joe Merlino. He became the boss. Like he hit the pinnacle of that life. They were never going to leave him alone. He's a degenerate gambler. Never paid nobody. Can't stop gambling, needs to earn a living, ain't gonna go get a job, can't stay in the mob because the government's never gonna leave him alone. They're gonna torture him until they put him in jail. So what does he do? Started a podcast. Because of us. We started the podcast. And now rat, motherfucker. Every word I use, rat, cursing, smoking.
Junkie, I hate that word.
And he's a degenerate, and he admits it.
And that's an addiction.
And Little Stuff's in recovery. He was a dope fiend.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, Little Stuff's in recovery. Yeah, he was a dope
Now, Little Snuff wasn't in the mob, was he?
No, he's a fanboy.
Okay. I was wondering how Merlino, I've been trying to find out how Merlino
and then he
met
says
him.
all these crazy, disgusting things about, cooperators and like, come on, man, change the record already. Like,
No, I mean, you are.
You're just as much as a disgrace to the mob as anybody.
Yeah.
You're a boss that has a podcast that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
If this was 30 years ago, they'd shoot him in the head. Just listen, I cooperated, and this was 30 years ago, they would shoot me in the head. The same thing for him. Look what they did to Joe Colombo. Why did he get shot? Because of the Italian-American League. The guy went on David Susskind. The guy went on, and they shot him.
Yeah.
No. So he just is a gambler that needs money that has a podcast.
Yeah. Well,
nobody's paying him $50,000.
No.
He went on Vlad. He got paid money for Vlad.
Yeah.
But Vlad ain't no way Vlad gave him
15. No.
Soft fight. I don't know if he did soft fight underbelly. I think he may be doing that, and believe me, he may be doing that. He might get paid a little more than me because he's got a bigger name than me, but he ain't getting 15,000. You don't believe that?
Francis, have you been on his show yet?
Yes, I've been on his show. He's been on my show. Great guy. I love him.
Man, his dad, man.
I know Sonny well. Sonny was a good guy. Sonny, He was a really good.
That guy
Very,
breathed in that oath, and
yeah,
I mean,
very,
too,
very
yeah.
close to my family. Sonny, my parents would go out. They would go out together. Michael's parents and my parents, very, very close. Me and Michael's a great guy. Got a beautiful family.
He does not look as old as he
He's
is,
older than
man.
me. He's 2
I
years older than
know,
me.
he does not look it.
He helps me whenever he can. Whenever I reach out to him, he's there for me. He's a beautiful person, Michael.
Him and Sammy get along now, I think?
Yeah, really. He just put it all over his Instagram about Sammy getting baptized.
Yeah. So, before you go, what's Sammy the Bull like? I mean, you got
Bull.
anything coming up with him? You know, that you can...
Hopefully, we're working on it. Sammy's hysterical. Got a great sense of humor. We and him get along really good. He's a lot of fun to be around, Sammy.
Yeah, maybe someday I can meet that guy. Before you go, plug away, please.
I have my Reformed Gangsters podcast. I got a Patreon channel. Check it out. It starts at $1. I got really a lot of new good content on there. I'm going to be in New York on September 27th. I'll be in the studio. We're going to do a Goodfellows thing, and the tickets are available on my website, Anthony Ruggiano Jr. @gmail.com. We're selling. People want to attend it. It's going to be like we're going to show the film, and then we're going to talk about it because I have relationships with them. So we're going to show the film, and then we're going to discuss the film. So it's going to be a Goodfellows film and discussion. And if anybody wants to attend, like I said, go to my website, AnthonyRuggianoJr.com, and check out my podcast, Reformed Gangsters.
Yeah, new episodes on YouTube, Instagram. Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Thanks.
I really do. Finally do it. Thank you. Really do.
Please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you, and as always, see you at the top.
Cause they know a nigga got bars. Yeah, I got bars. Rockstar, lil' mama, yeah, she bad in a hot car. Drinking lean off the act, yeah, she pop bars. And these niggas that